and apologies to members if there's a lack of clarity on my part. My instructions are in relation to Part 4 and Part 5, opening statements in relation to health, amendments to the Health Acts, reference to social care professions, and amendments to the Mental Health Act, 4 and 5. And thank you. In this emergency, a Cathaoirleach on deputies, additional healthcare staff will be required to cope with staff illness and increase in numbers of patients. The National Action Plan, published by the Government on the 16th of March, identified the need to facilitate the recruitment of retired health sector workers. Some of these workers are members of the professions which are subject to regulation under the auspices of statutory independent regulatory authorities, namely the Medical Council, the Nurses and Midwives Board, the Pharmaceutical Society of Ireland, Health and Social Care Professionals Council and the Dental Council. Some of these have indicated a willingness to rejoin the health sector here during this emergency. In an effort to maximise the number of people being restored to the register, consideration must be given to what barriers existed to their speedy and easy restoration, how these might be removed or mitigated against. In a review of the legal impediments to prompt restoration, barriers to quick restoration were identified. For example, at the CORU, the restoration process can be very lengthy, depending on whether the person had paid a fee to leave the register or had just left, or who just had allowed their registration lapse. For example, restoring a nurse can take a long time if documentation is incomplete, is awaited from different countries that a nurse may have engaged in practice in. In the light of this, it was decided to amend the 5 regulatory acts to create a specific COVID-19 temporary restoration, which would sit apart from the normal restoration process, which would provide these practitioners with a simpler registration process, provide a clear-cut route for removal from the register if appropriate and necessary. The COVID-19 application provisions for restoration under the 5 Acts have the following common features, namely they apply to previous registrants. They must be persons of good standing in their practice here. They'll be subject to temporary registration, which will cease on the 31st of July this year or on a different date by order of the Minister for Health. The bill makes clear that the registration under this provision does not attract the payment of any fee. They'll be subject to normal processes of complaint, fitness to practice. In the unlikely but nevertheless possible event that some returnees may decide to return to work on a more permanent basis, in that case, persons registered under this provision can apply in parallel for full registration. Disregard the temporary registration ends under the various acts by 31st of July this year or by order of the Minister for Health to be laid before the Houses in the normal way. Finally, there is temporary modification to Section 105 of the 07 Medical Practitioners Act. Under this provision, a person who is not a registered medical practitioner who is suspected of practising medicine may be investigated by the Medical Council and the findings given to An Garda Síochána. It would be important to provide the HSE with as much flexibility as possible. It may be necessary to redeploy staff to assign tasks outside their usual role. In this regard, a further provision relevant to all regulators, including PHECC, amends temporarily Section 105 of the 07 Medical Practitioners Act to provide clarity to registrants that where they are practising medicine and where they do so under the direction and control or in accordance with the direction in writing from a registered medical practitioner, that they are not practising medicine for the purposes of the Medical Practitioners Act 07. In this regard, such persons will, of course, be mindful of their skills to act at all times in the best interests of patients. It's worth noting that regulators have already put in place additional resources and designed IT systems that would enable streamlined, fast-track restoration of practitioners, and that the already much good work has been done in terms of restoring persons to the register. Let's hope these provisions will further assist regulators in effecting these restorations speedily. I concede that amendments have been put down which seek to facilitate COVID-19 specific registration process for people who have not worked in Ireland before. In this regard, let me say that there is already a provision within the various acts for dealing with applications for first-time registrants. It's simply too high a risk to circumvent the important checks that are and must be applied to people who have never worked in Ireland before. Thank you.